Family caregivers, whether they're nearby or far, there are at least 53 million unpaid family caregivers in the US. And in 2021, that stat referenced roughly $600 billion with a B. So what does that mean? The impact that it has on the family caregiver, the family, the economics. I mean, there are so many things that go into play. So stick with us while we have an incredible guest that just has that personal story, that personal connection, and all the impact, both negative and positive, of being that family caregiver.
This incredible show made possible by our wonderful sponsors, Assured Senior Living, Love, It's What We Do, and Serenity Engage, where care connects. Now, a brief message from Serenity Engage. Serenity connects aging service providers, older adults, and their loved ones in a single network. Our web, mobile, and smart assistance products power the network that enables real-time, HIPAA-compliant communication, collaboration, and education. When we care together, providers increase revenue and lower expenses, older adults receive better care, and family has greater peace of mind.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the incredible Cambria for the
Thank
intro
you.
of our amazing guest.
Thank you so much. So Rebecca Cole is our honored guest today. Rebecca comes to us from Boulder, Colorado, a very well-established executive and marketing leader in technology, very smart, educated, highly resourced woman who found herself faced with a new challenge, new opportunity. And as someone who rarely finds herself caught off guard, maybe a little ill-prepared, this human experience and aging journey certainly was one of those aha moments. And with that, Rebecca, welcome so much. And thank you for being a guest with us today.
Thank you, Cambria and Francis. Great to be here and good to see you both.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your sort of aha moment and how have you found yourself into this journey with your mom?
Yeah, so my aha moment was my father passed away in the summer of 2019, and my mom and my parents were living in Florida. My mom came up here, and she said, maybe I should look at a couple of independent living places. So we looked at a few in the area, and she really liked them, like one of them in particular. But she said, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm okay being in Florida. Well, that was 2019, as I said. And then what happened? The pandemic. So my mom was alone. She has a sister that lives nearby in Florida, but she was largely alone and couldn't see me and couldn't see my sister who lives in the UK and her grandkids. I don't have kids, so those grandkids are like her joy, And so pandemic goes by. I go down to Florida to celebrate her 80th birthday in 2021. And I tell you, I walked in the house after I did my COVID scrubbing from the plane. And I thought, you can't live on your own anymore. You can't live in this 2,000 square foot house. It wasn't like it was a complete disaster, but I could just tell. And I think a lot of caregivers go through that moment where they look at their parent and they say, you're just not able to really maintain the home, cook on your own. She could drive and do all the things, but she just wasn't as independent in terms of living in her own house. So we had the conversation. And of course, in Florida, there's a jillion, communities that she could live in. And she said, I really want to live near you. She couldn't move to the UK. I'd like to live near you. And so that started us on the journey. And Cambria, you said in the intro, like, I am a very I know what to do. Let's get it done. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And, we both wanted it to happen fairly quickly. It wasn't take a year to figure this out. And that might've been my, mistake in the beginning, right? Let's just fast track this. But I'll tell you, so the journey started on her birthday's February 20th. And by April 1st, she was living here in Colorado at a facility.
Wow. That's a really great job on your part, though. I got to say, the state move and all that stuff, that's awesome. Yeah. I do have a question, though. Do you think your mom, prior in 2019, Was she more social, getting out of the house more before the pandemic?
Yes and no. She had some ladies that she played mahjong with.
Mhm.
She played cards with. She wasn't quite as mobile or active
Mhm.
around the time my dad passed away and right after. But yes, so I'm going to whisper this in case she watches. She's a shopaholic. So she'd love to go shopping. And, that was kind of like her getaway. And she really couldn't do that in the pandemic. Now, of course, she's fully converted to online shopping, which is
Right.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because what we see a lot is this loneliness and isolation has a bigger impact than people want to realize. Like the loss of a spouse is obviously tragic and emotional enough, but then you put in the factor of they're not getting out anymore. They're not going to play their mahjong. They're not going to do some of the social components that were so critical to getting them engaged in the world around them, that we see this kind of withdrawing, and
Yeah.
they are just kind of stuck in that house and they're not doing the things they did. So I always like to kind of, bring it back to loneliness and isolation. Even if you're living in the house you've lived for 50 years, can still happen. Just because you're aging in place, that doesn't mean you solved your socialization needs and all that stuff. So really keep that in mind as we, as America really focuses on aging at home or aging in place, right? Because look at that social component. It's so important.
Yes, I agree. And she went to plays and things like that. She really loves culture and she couldn't do any of that. And so moving her to Colorado where she went into an independent living facility and she had many friends and, they took her on excursions and things like that. So it certainly was bumpy, but it was the much better place for her at that time of her life.
And when you're looking at, so now you and your mom have worked together. She's agreed to move to Colorado. And how did you go ahead and find the right independent living community for her? And then, well, at least the first one, right?
Mhm.
And what did you learn in that process of finding the right spot? And then what did you learn once you actually moved her in?
Yeah. I think because so she had looked at a few, as I said, when she was here and liked them. So that was very helpful. She had already started working with a consultant, to help us find somewhere. And she was pretty opinionated in the kind of place she wanted. And she wanted something that looked, glamorous, right? It looked beautiful. It had beautiful views. It had good food, and all of that was great. And so that made me feel like, okay, this is what she wants. And those places were good. However, when you actually get into the place, there's so much more to taking care of someone, right? It is the social interaction. It's also making sure that they're acclimated or accustomed or meeting new people, or one of the incidents that happened the first couple of weeks she moved in, she actually had to go into the hospital. She sat in one of the chairs that had wheels on the chairs, and as she was trying to pull out the chair, she missed the chair, hit the floor, hit her head. Paramedics were called. I'm going, it took a while for them to get a hold of me. So it's really like, now that's an
Dramatic.
panic, unfortunate accident, but it's also like, why are the wheels on the chair? Why wasn't I called immediately? This, that, and the other, right? So I think, not to blame the facility by any means, but it's more about how do you have all those checks and balances so that the caregiver isn't like, oh my God, my mom's in the hospital. What happened? What is going on here? So there's pros and cons, I think, for every type of facility. And again, like, how does the caregiver know the right questions to ask and make sure that they're informed? And independent living, where my mom was at the time, is very different than something like assisted living. And what rules do different facilities have in terms of the kind of care they'll give to somebody independent versus assisted?
You're so right, Rebecca. I was looking back, and before I had the opportunity to meet with Frances and Catherine Wells, quite frankly, I'm still learning, right? And that is just not something, when you're in the industry, right? They're talking about it like it's, oh, they're at this place and they're at this level and blah, blah, blah. But for those of us as family caregivers or daughters or sons or friends or whatever, we don't know those things. Those acronyms, the things that the industry is using, they are not family friendly. And I almost look at it, Rebecca, since you and I have the same background of coming from technology, right? And tech startups, we use our own vernacular, right? And we know that the acronyms that we use when we're talking to a customer, we have to put our customer hat on and not use the same language that we use in our internal meetings as business people running a business. We have to be customer friendly. And what is that customer experience and where is their education level? And start from that level and start using those words so we can bring them along the journey. And that isn't always the case with some of the senior industry, not because they don't want to, it's that it's just they're so close to it. And Francis, I mean, you must be shaking your head like, yep. And how, from your experience, is this like, I know, I get it, or wow, those are some good points?
I think for both of you, that is a big problem. I think improper assessments by communities is a rampant issue across the communities. I think too many providers are afraid to tell a family the honest truth. Is like, hey, your mom really isn't appropriate for this level of care. She really needs more care. And I'm sorry that you don't see it that way, because
it's hard. That's a hard conversation to have with anyone.
Terrible conversation to have with families, because the word memory care or even memory support brings this, in my opinion, is just
terrifying. It's scary.
Scary. It puts this nasty wall of it. Oh, my mom's not at that level. But the problem is when communities, I would say, acquiesce because they know it's that balance between filling a room or a bed or however you want to term that and doing what's right. What we're missing out on is the intimate care initially can actually improve that quality of life so much faster, right? Because what happens when you're in a lower level care than what that person needs, they're not getting that one-on-one attention. They're not getting that reminder to, hey, come out of your room and let's go do the newest activity at 10, right? There's an assumption that someone can read the activities or engagement calendar and know, okay, I'm going to put on my calendar at 10:30 on Tuesday. It's paint with Murph and, we're doing a poodle drawing, right? But what happens far too often is that doesn't happen. No one goes and reminds that person or says, hey, come on, let's go and do this together. Can you show me how you like to paint, right? And all of it. What happens is we're doing a disservice, because the quicker they get the right care, the more likely we can stabilize where they currently are and even showing maybe improvements in certain aspects, right? Mm-hmm. That to me is what we're grossly missing as an industry. Is, are we here to help people improve where they are today so that tomorrow is a little bit better, like that 1% better? Or are we just really trying to be like, shoot, my corporate boss told me I need to find 10 people to fill this apartment. Well, they want to be here. I can kind of make an argument they're independent living. Yeah, good enough for me. Boxes checked. There you go.
And Rebecca, I mean, I don't know about you, but it also is about educating, again, not only on the names of the different communities and levels and what care comes, but like our assumption, right? Because I'm sure when you moved your mom into her first independent living, I bet you had a lot of assumptions that you learned maybe weren't correct. Would that be true? And if so, what were they?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I was more worried about her fitting in. That was, I think, my assumption. And I think another assumption was, this will be great. You have people your own age. They'll all be your new best friends. And, without taking into account every human being, it's hard to make friends with new people. Some people are more extroverted, some people are not. My mom is more of an introvert. And so it was a little more difficult for her. I will say, Francis, to sort of address what you were just saying, like when you find those people at a community who work there, who are quote unquote like activities managers, who go above and beyond, my gratitude for those people, I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And even my mom, she just fell in love with a few of them who were like, let's do this. Oh, Mahjong? Teach others to play Mahjong. So that was really helpful. I think my main assumption, to answer your question, Cambria, was she will be so happy instantly. And that really took a while. And happy can be in many things. It can be the social interaction. It can be food. In my mom's case, she's kind of a foodie gourmand, and she always wanted to have good food. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the food was bad, the meal was bad. I'm like, stop. But that is your quality of life, right? Like there's other things that I care about. And if I'm suddenly in a new place with all these new people, that might be easy for me to be like, oh, look at all these great people. I can talk to these new friends. And it was much harder for her. And so how does that transition be smoothed, right?
So Rebecca, question real quick for you. Do you think you projected at all on what you thought your mom needed versus what mom needed?
Oh, yes. Francis,
I know it's kind of a really weird question to ask, but
I think about that a lot. And, in retrospect, I could have been a lot more gentle with her. Here's this woman, 80 years old. My dad died the year before, 2 years before, and this is her life in Florida, right? And now all of a sudden her bossy daughter is like, okay, we're moving. We got this. And you got 150 Santas, throwing them out. Pick 3. You have all these ornaments, pick 10, And so I should have been a little bit more gentle with her because I just thought, I'm going to make this easy so you don't have to deal with it. But I didn't think about her emotional, holding on to things and how to sort of gently ease that transition.
And I guess I also meant to like kind of projecting on what level of care you think mom needed, right? Versus maybe mom was somewhere different than what you thought, whether either more care needed or less care needed or anything like that. Because I see that happen, like you said, Camber, in these conversations we've had with families where, they're, mom doesn't have memory issues. She's totally fine. You go meet them, you're like, no, your mom might walk out that front door and never come back. So we need to have a different discussion. Sorry, but like we're really concerned that she's not safe.
I think I knew pretty much she's really quite with it, and she was more with it back then. And I don't think I knew the difference between independent and assisted. That was the area above assisted. I thought, oh, she doesn't need that.
Right.
But I thought maybe she was a little bit more independent than she actually was, more around mobility versus, mental capacity.
That makes sense. Yeah, more physical care versus the cognitive component, right? Do you think we do as I guess service providers, do you think we do a poor job of educating on what really independent living is, what assisted living really is, and obviously what memory care support really is? Because that can vary, obviously. Do you think that's something that's lost in the consumer education?
I think so. And it's hard because it's like you get all the pamphlets and they say what it is, but there are a lot of acronyms, like you said, Canberra.
Too many.
And like, what does that really mean? What is assisted? For a long time, I confused assisted living with skilled nursing. And I'm like, what is the difference between that? Huge difference. And so I think, my mom is now in assisted living. She's in her second assisted living place in 6 months because she really did not like the first one. She really likes the second one. And so when the time came to say, okay, I think this is where we really need to move her to, that was a real hard one because I didn't exactly know, like, what is assisted care versus independent care? And how, if she's very cognitively with it, what does it mean to be assisted,
Right.
And that was, I think, harder.
Let's say jump in, Camber, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a great, call to action after this call of something that we could do. We're looking at the Mavericks of Senior Living podcast. We're looking at Collaboration and Aging Unconference. We're looking at our communities, and we're looking about how can we continue elevating and impacting. And I think, Rebecca, it'd be a great project to work with yourself and Francis, you and Catherine in our community to really do a great job that's family focused, defining what that continuum looks like, and definitions that are not legalese, right? Or the marketing brochure with the buzzwords, because Rebecca and I could totally buzzword you on marketing all day long, and you would be like, what are these people talking about?
Right. Yeah.
So let's use that as a call to action for us and our community to actually create that. And for those of you that are attending the meetup in April, Rebecca, maybe that's a great thing that we can do because we've got all the representatives there.
Or what acronyms need to be better defined, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
fine. You want to use an acronym, fine. You want to use what, CNA, right? Which is Certified Nursing Assistant, or I
You
don't
guys
know.
know them like the back of your hands, but I
Right.
will tell you, Rebecca and I are the face of people that we think we're, fairly educated. We can navigate our way around the world and have done, held some leadership positions. We've been sitting at the board table and we don't know what the hell half of the industry is talking about when it comes to basic level care. And guess what? Thank goodness Rebecca and I, right now anyway, are confident enough to actually start calling people out and saying, I don't know what that means. Can you help
Right.
me?
Well, it's
And
like
then on the flip side, Francis, I think what you said is really great. And speaking with Kay Adams, the author of Bedside Witness, listening to how she as a counselor and now an independent coach of talking families through before we ever even come into the community of what questions to ask and to get real with what our situation is. And we're human. And there are people that, and in her book, she talks about people like Rebecca and I that are like, we're going to get this done. And now it's like, okay, now we know. So now we're going to take a step back and ask some questions. And there's other people that are like, nope, not going to go there. Nope, nope, nope.
And again, I think it's transparency on both sides, right? It's families being transparent about how mom's actually doing, not this sunshine, rosy.
And what we want, right? What is?
Right, because what happens is you paint this rosy picture and mom starts at this level of environment or care or community, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's a month in and everyone's like, well, I hate it here. This is terrible. I can't believe that you didn't do this. I can't believe this happened. It's like, well, honestly, your mom should be 3 levels higher because this isn't really where mom should be or whatever it is, right? And so I think for us too, and Catherine, since she's not on today, she asked a question, how do you tell if someone's assessing properly? I think it's really hard because it is subjective, but the best way to do it, the most accurate, is just be honest. Tell them about all the good things and the not so good things that's going on with your loved one. Don't say that, oh, mom can definitely use the bathroom by herself. She never needs assistance. But then in reality, she gets the community. No, mom needs assistance every time she goes to the bathroom. Oh, mom doesn't get lost going to the hallway for lunch. No,
right.
Mom can't find lunch. That's why she's not eating. Some of those little nuances we don't think about because
Francis, it's funny. I almost look at it like when the dentist asks you, so have you been flossing every day? And you're like, absolutely. Like that isn't going to help you. That's not going to help you with your dental care. And by the way, like family members, we do it. I mean, and I think that's a generational thing too, is that it's between wanting to respect our family, maybe telling ourselves something, and in the end of the day, like we need value and we need trust and education with who we're talking to really feel that we can be vulnerable and honest. And if you don't have that trust, kind of that cone of trust, right, it makes it sort of scarier than already what you're going through. Rebecca, I can tell you've got something good to add.
Please jump in.
I think it's really thinking about, there are 2 customers in the buying scenario. I'm using marketing sort of language. I am a customer and my mom is a customer. Yep. And so my mom, there's a lot of shame around aging and around having to say, I can't walk without a walker. I have trouble. This or that, right? And so when my mom entered this latest community, she was given an assessment and I sat right next to her on the assessment, but I could just feel her sort of getting uptight about it because someone is judging you. Someone is judging you on how well you can, I don't know, memorize 3 things and say them backwards or whatever it is, right? And like, all right, maybe that is the right test. I don't know. But, I think I was more willing to say, my mom needs to be in assisted living. And she was very adamant that she did not want to go into assisted living. She felt like that was a shameful thing, that it made her, inadequate in some way or whatever. And I'm like, my sister and I had to keep saying, this is about the level of care that you need now. And I think that part of the equation isn't quite talked about enough. And so then the trust, Cambria, that you were saying, it's not just between the facility or the people running it and my mom, but also me and my mom.
You. Yeah. And I think because, I'm here actually in my childhood home with my mom who is living with dementia. And we have that same conversation, and it's a level of trust. And something that we've been working with is I got you. Like, we are, yeah, we're living with this, and there are some new challenges, but there's so much you can do. And let's make sure we're building up the right team so you keep crushing the things that you can do and focusing more on that instead of what you can't do. And that, that also continues to help. And when I feel like I'm in a place, and Rebecca, I don't know if you feel this way also, where we don't have the trust and alignment, whether that's with my mom and I or with other people, family members that are coming in, caregivers that are outside the family, I want to protect and deflect. So if like you and I aren't on the same page, like I kind of just don't even really want you in our circle, because if I can protect the environment and where we are and what we're doing, and I can deflect all the things that will take us away from a stable, good day, like I will do that all day long. And I do that because I don't have trust that everyone else around me will, even though they might have great intentions, it's not what I know will work for my mom. And so then I don't want you in my bubble.
Well, I think you said it best, Rebecca, there. It's an acceptance of aging in society, right? I mean, bringing awareness that these diagnoses that we're seeing, or the need to use a walker, or the need to use a cane or other assistive device, is not the end, right? And this is what's happening. Far too long, we value this concept that if you're not, whatever, 100% able-bodied, I'll call it, I don't know how else to really define it, right? That, oh, well, you can't, why are you doing that? Oh, that, are you really sure you should ski? Like, or, oh, are you sure you should do that hike? You kind of need to use like walking sticks. I don't know if that's safe.
Judging and shame.
Judging and shame. And so I think you're right. You're both correct. There's a few things we have to look at. Is maybe the assessment process is missing wholeheartedly this true person assessment, right? And I don't mean, we still have to balance that between regulatory compliance, right, and person. And it's like, we still, call someone an Alzheimer's patient or whatever, a dementia patient, right? The sad part is, for us, until we shift and acknowledge this person is living with X, it's not defining who they are forever. It's a small blip in their chapter of life.
It's almost like, and they also like jazz, and they also are Jewish, and they also are a mother, and it's the whole thing.
It's not leading with who they are first. They are first a person, a mom, a grandmother, a spouse, a business lady, whoever they are. That is where we need to start from, the crux of this. And then, oh, by the way, they happen to have X, right? And I don't like assisted living. I want to get it to living with assistance, because that's all we're asking people to do, is live with a little extra help. Let's not put that as the focal point.
Yeah, and I think if facilities can start with that mindset and actually help the caregiver to also have that mindset, because even what you just said, like living with assistance is so much more hopeful rather than like you're deficient and you need assistance, right? And so I think what I've seen in my journey of 3 different facilities now is like, they can have all the things. They can have the good looking facility. They can have great food. They can have all great things. And that's fine, right? But if there's a way to somehow help them shift their message or shift their focus from, we're here to make sure people are safe, to make sure people are well fed, whatever, to like, what is my role, the facility's role, the people who work at the facility's role in helping people live with assistance. That is very different than, how do I house people in assisted living and give them their medication or whatever. So, I mean,
you're so right, Rebecca. And I think that also is our expectation, right? Like what you just said at the end, as a family member, that always has been my expectation. And I think that's been and I know, Frances, you've seen this so many times, is if we could just get mom here, then she'll be all taken care of and I'm all good. And I think, Rebecca, you and I have learned, that is absolutely not the case.
But I would argue that's how it has to be, though. See, this is the difference. Is I think that as a provider, we're not going to be able to fill every gap of what needs to be done. However, 80% of the heavy lifting should be done by the community. And the family is entrusting the community to do that so the family can be there to support mom in their role, right? It's the family role that has to be figured out and meshed, right? For far too long, communities assume that, care is a small part of what we do, right? It's these other things we have, these amenities, the pool, the weight room, the grandiose, dining terrace that you can have a private chef, right? Which is all, don't get me wrong, those are all fantastic. But at the end of the day, if we're still not serving people in a manner that improves their quality of life, then all those things don't matter. Because our team has to be there to serve them in that moment of need in a proactive manner, not a pseudo-reactive component.
Right. And when Cambria and I met a month or so ago, we were talking about this, and I used the phrase like care is the new luxury. And what I meant by that is let's say it's care forward, right? It's care forward. And that's a different mentality in how you train people, and how you hire people, and how you can still have the luxury, beautiful, facility with great food, but the care is something that is like part of your mission, and not care to, state regulations or, all the things, all the boxes they've checked. That's like the bottom line. But what does it mean to actually provide care as a luxury, just as important and just as desired as your private chef and your beautiful dining room?
I will tell you, as you two are marketing expert that will run laps around me, that isn't sexy to sell. Sorry, it isn't. And people don't want to hear it. People don't want to hear that.
That's the conversation and opportunity, though, because I think what Rebecca was saying is it's the education, because we assume wrongfully, the family caregivers come in that assume all the table stakes, as Rebecca and I see them, the care, the real human care, we assume that's already there. So we're just building on top of it. So when we see the Starbucks in the lobby and the pretty chandeliers and the beautiful interior design and the private bathrooms, we assume those are the cherry on the sundae, right? Because the rest of the goodness, the Ben and Jerry's and all the high quality ice cream is already in there. So those are just beautiful things, and that we're just making it very aesthetic. But I think that's the assumption that family members have, because we are not educated and we don't understand the real challenges. And this is not a bash on senior living community.
No, I'm not.
As I've gotten and understand and seen the inside, I get there are really real challenges. There are phenomenal owners and caregivers and engagement people that want to do great things. And the metrics and the standards and all of the rules that they have to honor, then all of a sudden, because they're understaffed and all of the things, what Rebecca was like, I know you've got all the checklists of things you have to do. That's the only thing sometimes that they actually can even get done.
Yes.
So it's not just education and value and the care forward. It's also like that whole model then is broken because it's not working.
I think our whole aging model isn't working. I will be the first to tell everyone, and people think you know me well enough, Cambria, that sometimes I say some things that get some odd looks. But I will be the first to say that, our model, I think, is really, really good for care, but I don't think our current model in its state is relevant for 10 years from now. I mean, I really think that if we're in this mindset that the models we're using today or even 10 years ago are going to be relevant moving forward, then these companies, these organizations are, I'd say, proverbial out of business. I don't mean that in the literal sense, but we're missing out on serving the right market segment here when it comes to how we actually showcase aging as a beautiful, powerful thing in our society.
Yes. It is. It's changing. What is aging, right, Rebecca? Like, and it's so big, just like we are, right? Like where we are in our 40s and 50s and figuring stuff out. Like there are so many different 40 and 50-year-olds about what's important to them and how they live their lives. And it's just the same as 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're not all of a sudden these 110-year-old hunched over, like can't, whatever that bad stereotype is. It's just so wrong because it's only covering one segment. And like you said, Francis, aging isn't sexy. Well, what can we do to change that a little bit? Like, okay, it might not be sexy, but guess what? Maybe you're going to be lucky enough to actually get there. And what do you want that to look like?
Exactly. And I think, Rebecca, going off what you said, is the bells and whistles are great, right? I think, but what happens too often is there's the assumption that if the building looks great or has that fancy high-end coffee shop or whatever, whatever bougie coffee you want to use, that everything else is taken care of, because who won't have great care if you've got a personal chef and, a Starbucks in your lobby and the most latest, greatest fitness center ever built in the entire, whatever state, right? Who won't have that component? So of course the care is going to be great. And in reality, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe it's somewhere in between. And I think for me, what I've seen over the years is a proactive care model, or is what really helps, right? Is being, like you said, care forward, Rebecca. I love the way you looked at that. And I think, we need to stand up to what these models are and acknowledge, like, hey, you've got a great piece here, but how do you make that other piece that really can help people thrive just a little bit better? Like 1% better. That's it. Not asking for a game changer, just 1% better tomorrow than you were today.
Right. And I think our society, and certainly at a certain demographic level, we're conditioned to expect that luxury is what we really want, right? I'm speaking as my mom as the customer, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I want that. I've reached a point in my life and I can afford it. So this is what I want. And we aren't asking the question. So the facilities, the people who, the corporations are delivering that. I mean, just
Correct.
here in Boulder, there's a brand new facility, which I'm like, I'm going to put myself on the wait list for that one. But that's Sanitas, right? And it's like, holy cow, that is gorgeous. It's also, holy cow, that is expensive. So we're only catering to a certain demographic. What about the rest of us who may not be able to afford that? 2, yes, it's beautiful, it's amazing. But me, not being me, the customer of the caregiver, I'm not asking the questions because I'm so wowed by the luxury. Kind of what you said, Cambria, like it's got the whole Ben and Jerry's thing here. It must have everything. And it's not necessarily the facility's fault, right? They have a very hard time keeping people. They do need to do things by regulations. But if there's a way, as we keep going into this aging economy and more people are going into it because we have huge numbers starting to go into that, how do we think about helping corporations build that into their mission? Not just build the amazing place that has all the cool things and where everybody wants to live, but they're building in a care, format, a care protocol, a care mission. As
You know what you maybe just think about, Rebecca, is it's almost like being a B corporation, right?
Yes.
Like the triple bottom line is something that's talked about a lot. And what could that triple bottom line be for senior living?
Margin and mission. Margin and mission.
That's
Margin and mission and metrics to actually measure that in a way that it's not just the top dog saying, I care about you only hitting these top line metrics in terms of speed, profitability, et cetera. We're also going to value this triple bottom line for senior living. And guess what? When we start coming in as family caregivers and strong influencers, FYI, on the decision making, we're going to start to ask to see your triple bottom line.
Right. Just like consumers say, is this a B Corp? Will I buy from it? Will I support it? Is it sustainable? Right. Or investing, what's your ESG, environmental sustainability goals? I want to know. I'm not going to invest in you. That's very interesting. You could have like a seal of approval. And so it's not just the corporations saying we do all these things, i.e. greenwashing, but it's also rewarding their employees, rewarding their protocol, incenting that and hiring based on that, because we have pockets of really lovely people who have made my mom's life
unbelievable people,
right?
I think a big starting point for that is acknowledging what that real estate driver factor is, because the biggest issue I think facing larger communities is how much value is put into that real estate component and what that does to affect operations.
And it's a totally divergent incentive for the company versus the customer.
Correct. And I love that. I mean, I think you're great, because I say a lot that a dementia diagnosis isn't the end, but a change in the ending, right? And so I firmly believe that whatever we're facing in aging, it's not the end. Our chapters just might need to be rewritten a little bit. And so for communities and organizations and corporations, we have to start buying in that newsflash, when people get older, there's a potential, not a guarantee, that they're going to need a little assistance. So we have to have the models prepared to be there to offer that assistance when they need it, not when it's convenient for the provider or for the operator or for whoever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right. Them waiting for care doesn't really help them get better or get stable or all those things. It kind of just.
Yeah. And I think what Rebecca and I have seen also, and Francis is also having the empathy, understanding that in business, right, we're looking at personas, right? What are all the different personas that we're here to serve? And a persona of the direct customer, the influencer, all of those things. And what I've learned from you, Francis, is that, you know, I love your line right there. If you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. The personas are so diverse, right? Because we're human, and you know, but that is a great place to start. Like, are there, I don't know, 10 key personas? You know, what would that triple bottom line look like? What are those education things that we need so we can be better consumers and better advocates? And I think with just, I mean, not just, if by even starting having those conversations with the right people in the room, I mean, let's get curious.
Yeah. And, you know, this is a really difficult business to be in. It's a business of caring for people. And business is not so good at that. Business is about, let's make money and let's give money to our shareholders. And that's fine. That is business, right? But then how do you take this type of business with this type of customer, which I think is fairly unique? I mean, there's probably other examples, maybe hospitals or things like that, but that's really like, let's get this person better and get them heck out of there. You know, they are living here. And so what does that mean to have a business that's focused on, I think, Francis, you said it, like, it's how to make it beautiful and it's the next chapter of life. And when they don't do that, it's up to the caregiver to either provide that or reassure them or move them, as I had to do, right? And I don't think it was the fault of the facility. It was just like, this is not what my mom needs, and now we need to go find her something else. And that's and you know.
And I can tell you from my personal stories of talking to, because fortunately enough, Brian and I don't have any outside investors. It's just him and I, which makes us, you know, able to do whatever we really want, right? Within reason, of course. It's really educating the investors, though, on the difference in how our organizations operate in this model, right? It's not as directed. There's a property company that holds the property that gets a rent. There's an operating company. There's a management company. You have all these different pieces. But it's understanding that it's not like filling an apartment building. I've had too many people that like are in multifamily real estate. They're like, well, I'd love to add this to my portfolio. I think it'd be a great, you know, real estate investment. I go, oh, if you only knew the actual intricacies of this business, right? It gets so easy to add this as, oh, it's a multifamily play. It's not really. I mean, it's not quite that simple, people. Like, oh, just how hard is it to fill 50 beds of older adults? It's like, well, again, you know, we're simplifying this business model here.
If filling the beds is the goal, then probably not that hard. But filling the beds as a standalone goal, you will fall flat every time, and it's the wrong metric, right? I mean, it's a metric that's absolutely important, but it's the right people filling the beds and the right families and the right fit. And we all know in business, it's like, you know, you get investment, right, from private equity, and it's grow and expand when you maybe don't even have the foundation built yet. And so perhaps this podcast, these conversations get us back to what is the foundation. And by the way, the single family home foundation that we built in 1922 perhaps is not the right foundation that we need for 2030 plus.
Yeah. And I think what you said, Francis, about education, it is back to, you know, I work for a climate nonprofit for many years. And this was all about how do you educate the value of wind and solar versus, you know, coal-fired power or gas-fired power, right? How do you educate on that? And so what you're talking about is having an investor understand the value of a different kind of community. And the value isn't just in the physical assets. The value is in attracting people who want that kind of care. Like, let's say it's 5 years from now, and there's this kind of amazing community where, you know, it's care forward. I think I would want to put my mom in that kind of community. Millions of other people like me would want that too. Right.
No,
And so how do you show an investor that that is so much more valuable, because you're going to have a huge market versus just,
And what would that need to look like? I mean, Rebecca, I think that's another call to action for us to keep this conversation going with this in mind. We've got really smart, amazing, innovative entrepreneurs and industry experts. We've got our academics and gerontology, right? And we've all admitted that we've got some real challenges and what we're doing is not scalable and is not working. What would that look like? What would that really, if we could throw everything out and start from scratch, what would that really look like? Let's not talk about what's feasible today and tomorrow. Absolutely, it has to be something that you want to invest in it because, yes, the care is there. And what could the return be? And that return might be 100x what we're even thinking it could be.
Right.
But guess what? It's like our health insurance, right? Heaven forbid we actually invest in things that are going to be proactive, because we know for sure once someone gets something, we know exactly what the dollars and returns are going to be with the medication, the surgeries. But what if we could say you're going to make so much more money, right? You're going to be so much more profitable, and believing that being proactive will serve you well. And that's the age old in so many industries right now as a world. That's what we're trying to change, that thought process, switch the narrative on that. How about we start with this let's start fresh. What would that look like?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. I think bringing the right stakeholders together who have different incentives, me, Francis, the investor, what does it mean to create that future together? Right?
Exactly.
What is the value that can be created?
Yeah. And then let's get a test going, right? Let's get an MVP up there and start finding some bright spots and figuring out how we can not make this just a conversation and a podcast, but how we can actually transform the way we look at care forward.
And I think too that change really won't occur until staying where someone is more uncomfortable than the change, right? I think as a society, we get comfort is both a blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
It's that horrible climate, right? It's so much safer for us to just keep doing what we're doing, even as we have this building set of proof points that say, this is not going to last. This is not going to last. But it's also safe, but I don't know what what do I do? And so if we have some kind of movement or group that is helping with this particular area of life, what does it really look like to age well? That could be pretty.
And I think it's a sustainability component, right? Is can you build a model that isn't one that's existing today that has value to sustain for the long-term future? Because I think there are some great ideas that never pencil, right? Because whether you're philanthropic, whether you're private pay, whether you're government assistance, right? It's still the cash flow has to still work in some capacity, right? And so I think once you showcase that, no, this works, even in a small microcosm of, I don't know, a smaller test pilot or whatever you want to call it, and then you can expand it from there, that's where it has to start is, hey, the system we have today, let's throw it out. Let's like you said, Camber, let's start from scratch. Let's pretend we don't know anything about the system today. What would we actually do? And how would that look? And, I think that's a great call to action is throw crazy ideas out there. Let us hear them. I mean, if it's putting aging people on the moon or whatever it may be, right? Just put something out there that you'd be almost, I don't want to say embarrassed, but you would be like, oh, that could never work. Because guess what? You get enough people in a room that think differently, that could turn into a pretty cool idea.
Yep. Yeah. I could sit here all day with Rebecca and Francis,
Yes,
visualizing a better world tomorrow, but I guess we should let Rebecca get back to her day.
We should. Rebecca, thank you. Thank you so much. And I would love to leave any parting words to you about what you would love to see or a call to action that we could bring the community in on.
Well, thank you both for having me. It was such a fun conversation. I think what I would leave people with is from a caregiver perspective, it really feels like you're alone in this. It felt like I was alone. As I said, my sister, she lives in the UK and she's so supportive and helpful. And when I say alone, like we each seem to go through this journey alone at the same time that hundreds of thousands of other people are going through it just the same. How do we connect each other? How do we support each other? How do we, I have several friends, they're like turning to me for advice because I've gone through it first, but they have different, dynamics, that their parent may be in a very different stage of life and I don't know enough. So I would love that. Like, how can we not feel so alone as a caregiver going through this journey? I don't know the answer, but that's my ask.
Yes, I love that. And that's a call out to our unconference community as well. We have lots of different groups that are out there, but what's the right one for what Rebecca is talking about is how can we feel less alone, more supportive, allow us to be able to navigate the human experience in aging for our loved ones with more support, education, and just to let us have more joy and less of the stress that innately will be there.
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed. Well, thank you both. This has been a great conversation, and one, I think, Cambria, we need to not really let it fizzle, right? We need to find ways to keep this momentum going.
On it.
Thank you both. It's a pleasure.
So, Rebecca, thank you as always. Thank you for sharing your story. I know sometimes it's not easy, and we really appreciate you sharing, navigating this, aging journey. So, to our audience, share some of your thoughts on things, ways or ideas on how we could revamp and refresh this aging experience, not from current models, but from a model that doesn't exist. So until next time, be kind and go out and pay it forward.